Hi, it's Verna from Great Valley Library. I am just here getting set up for our special guest speaker, who is already here, who is Leif Gregersen. He's here as a guest speaker for Mental Health Week.
So my name is Leif Gregersen. I don't know where to start. I really love to travel. I've been to a lot of places. Great Valley is a special place for me because when I was a kid, every fall my dad would take the whole family, load us on the van, and we would ride up to Great Valley just to watch the colors change in the trees. And it's funny because when I was young, I had episodes of depression where I didn't feel much like I wanted to do anything, and I kind of stood up to myself. And that was one of the ways my dad found could help me lift it out of my depression. Was like going for a drive, traveling somewhere. We go to Jasper a lot, sometimes we go to Elk Island and things like that. Another place was, now my name is Leif, and that's kind of a funny name. But I was named after my dad, his name's Leif as well. He's from Denmark. And so when I was about 10 years old, he took my brother and I to Denmark, and we stopped off in London. And London is just such a magical place. You know, the buildings are so old and beautiful. And it was like London became my inspiration. And eventually I was old enough to go to London, I went to travel in Europe, but I was able because I had mental health issues, I didn't have very much money, I was having different problems, so I wasn't able to travel. But then just like 4 years ago, a lot of things happened in my life, a number of reasons. And I was just saying earlier that I just got back from Vancouver, and a couple of weeks ago I went to Saskatoon, and I love places, meeting people, and sharing my story. And another thing about me is that in my books, of course, I've written books all over, published them. Some of them on the internet, people read different places all over the world. So people buy from the UK, Japan, and it's really neat to think that my writing inspires people and helps people in different parts of the world. So I've done all of these things, but one of the things I think is important to remember is that I still have a mental illness which affects me every day of my life. My mental illness is known as schizoaffective disorder with anxiety. And the funny thing is that a lot of people will get anxiety doing this sort of thing, just speaking to people and standing up and all that. But I've sort of learned by practicing. I currently work for the Schizophrenia Society, and almost every week I'll give a talk like this to people, to students, university classes. I even go to the police recruit center, and I speak to the people who are being trained to become Edmonton City police officers about mental health and different things like that. And so that part of my anxiety is pretty well controlled. But I noticed my anxiety coming up here. My friend drove me, and he's a very good driver. But I kept worrying, what if he didn't see that curve? What if somebody was trying to pass that truck, and my mind was going like that. And it makes it difficult to function sometimes. And really, I think most people in the world have different things that sort of bother them. And I think one of the most valuable things you can do is to try to face some of these things. For me, if I were to face my anxiety, I might want to get a car. I don't have my own car, but I would get a car. And then one thing I could do is take driving lessons, so I'm a really good driver. And that would be a way of facing my anxiety. So just to get back to the illness a bit, it didn't start when I was young. It didn't start when I was born. It started before. It started from way back. My great grandmother had schizophrenia, and this was at a time when there were very little medications, when there was an awful lot of something called stigma. Stigma is a marked disgrace given to a person or thing because people don't understand it. And there's a lot of stigma surrounding mental illness. And, you know, people just sort of judge you and they hear you have mental illness. They think, you know, well, maybe if I spend too much time with it, I might be Catherine or something. And it makes you feel horrible. But this is something that we have to start changing. In my work with the Schizophrenia Society, I know a woman who was around the 60s, and she said back then, nobody talked about cancer. Cancer was a word that just, you know, cancer meant certain death. Cancer was a horrible thing to talk about. You didn't bring it up in company. But then slowly people started talking more and more about cancer. And all of a sudden, people were able to detect cancer sooner because they were more aware of what it was about and how to detect it. Through different self-exams and different things like that, or asking the doctor, getting the regular checkups. And so people started talking about cancer. More people started surviving cancer. More funds were raised so that they could learn more about cancer, how to treat it, how to stop it. And a lot of people lived a lot longer because the stigma was slowly eaten away just by having conversations. And this is something I feel is very important to happen with illnesses like schizophrenia and mental illnesses. So my great grandmother had schizophrenia. It ran through my mother's side of the family quite a bit, and but it started to show when I was quite young. There's something called psychosis. Does anybody ever hear of psychosis or anything like that? Psychosis is one of the main aspects of schizophrenia. And some people, when they see the word schizophrenia, they think it means the person has a split personality. Now, the truth is the word schizo, it's sort of from an older word called schism. And it does mean a split, but it's not a split personality, it's a split from your conception of reality. People who have psychosis have a different concept of reality because they've got so much going on in their heads, you know, with their I like to say there's about 4 things, at least in my own experience, to do with psychosis. The first thing is delusional thinking. And delusional thinking is when you get an idea in your head that's not true, and it may be a grandiose idea. You may think you're the king of England. You may think, you know, that you have millions of dollars, different things like that. And that's inside. It's a delusion. And then the next step to it, number 2, is hallucinations. Hallucinations is when your mind sort of creates sensory input, like things you touch, things you taste, things you smell, things you see, and it creates things that are false. And quite often these false hallucinations sort of reinforce your delusional thinking. So like I might think I'm the king of England, and then I might hear someone say, hi, Leif, except it gets mixed up in my brain. And I think he said, hello, your highness. And so the hallucination makes the delusion even worse. And then the next step is that you can have paranoia. And this is when you have a fear of being harmed by people that isn't grounded in reality. An example of this, when it happened to me a few years ago, I had some psychosis. And I believe there were people in my hall who were very mad at me for different reasons that weren't true and that they wanted to harm me. And I was terrified, and I moved all my stuff into my bedroom from my living room, and I sat with a blanket over my head, playing video games, eating out of cans, and just trying to be as quiet as I could. And I was really scared, but it wasn't a real reason to be scared. These people were not trying to harm me. It was all in my head. And then the next thing, the 4th thing to do with psychosis, is that you have a susceptibility to believe these things. See, these things alone, the delusions, the hallucinations, the paranoia, alone, they wouldn't be a bad thing. But when your mind is very susceptible to having these false ideas, they combine to make a very disturbing illness. Now, I went through elementary school, and I actually had a lot of fun. I really loved a lot of things about my school. We would do these things like we would line up in the hallways 3 weeks before Christmas and every day until Christmas, and sing Christmas carols every morning. I loved it. We had a thing called a penny carnival. We would all save our pennies and we'd use them for different games, and we had to toss them into a bottle or something. And it was so much fun. And then we had a thing called a book fair, which was even better. All our classes would get together and compete to see who could gather the most books. And then we'd have this huge sale in the auditorium of another school, and we'd use the money for different things the school needed. I didn't have too many friends. The other thing I did was I played a lot of football and basketball and volleyball, different sports, and I was very good in classes. But to me, I wasn't happy because I had this depression. And so this went on, and then elementary school ended, and I went into junior high, which is in grade 7. And this was a really hard time because there's a lot of peer pressures from people when you're in junior high. People judge you, people pick on you if you stand out. And I had certain differences than other people, and it was a very hard time. But then something happened was that in grade 8, my parents decided they wanted to join Air Cadets. And this was something that was absolutely fantastic to me. We got to wear these cool uniforms. I had so many friends finally. We went on weekend camps and we dressed up like soldiers and stuff like that. We learned all sorts of things, how to fly planes, how to camp out, how to shoot rifles and carry flags. And it was just so much fun. And we also had a lot of sports too. And so at that point, I actually decided that I didn't want to go into either computers or into law school or something like that when I grew up. I decided that I wanted to join the military. But at some point, it became an obsession. And I went into grade 9, and in grade 9, I would always wear these army uniforms, and sometimes I would carry knives because I liked the idea, if I ever had to camp out or ever had to, chop some wood or something, I had a knife with me. And what sort of happened that really was kind of the worst thing was my parents were very much against guns, although they knew I was using that to Air Cadets for target practice and things like that. But I went and bought a BB gun, and my parents said no about it, permission to have it. And I had this, and I got caught shooting some holes in the windows and stuff. I had trouble. And I would have gotten in a lot of trouble, but my parents said, okay, well, our son is having problems. We're going to have him see a psychiatrist. And so I went to see a psychiatrist. Now, psychiatrists are very smart people. I don't know if you might know any, or if there's even one in Great Valley or one travels through. But what a psychiatrist is, they're a medical doctor that have all the training of a regular medical doctor, except for a number of years after they've completed their doctor's training, they specialize in the human brain. And most of them are very powerful and very knowledgeable, and they can help solve your problems. But I only saw, because I thought I was in trouble, I only saw the doctor as someone who could get me in more trouble in the hospital. And he did. He put me in the hospital for a week. And they did some tests and everything. And they said, oh, the tests are fine. Well, why am I here? And then at the end of the week, we had a family conference. And I sort of thought that the reason I was there was because I was having trouble with my dad. And my mom thought, my dad thought that the trouble in the family was me, and we got this argument and all that. And then I had to stay for another week. And this in grade 9, when you're just sort of getting old enough, to really, that your friends really matter, you kind of hope you have a girlfriend or something like that. In grade 9, to be this different than other people was very difficult. But I went back to school, and what I learned about being in the hospital was that it was big hospitals. And so thinking that I never get sent back if I sort of straightened up and flew right, as they say, I got some normal clothes. I started trying to act more like a normal teenager. And a few things happened. And then there was kind of a negative thing. As I mentioned, I had anxiety and I also had depression. And I found something that could help with that. And it wasn't the best solution, it was alcohol. And I found that if I had a few drinks and I went to a dance, I'd have the courage to ask to go dance, I would be embarrassed and all this stuff. And so it was almost like this alcohol was some kind of magic drug or whatever that would just enhance my life. But it's actually a very damaging, very terrible thing. And fortunately now, as I look back, it's been 10 years since I had it. And I don't miss it at all. I really enjoy my life with alcohol, and I feel a lot better about my life. But I did a lot of going to parties and drinking, drinking, and it was also the year I started student school and different things like that. And I remember at the end of grade 10, I had to take my report card around and get it marked by all my teachers and everything. And it was just fail. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, I used to be such a good student. Even just 2 years before grade 8, I was an honor student at one point, which meant I had an average of over 80%. So I was doing really well. And I just couldn't believe it. And I just realized, this is so important to have good grades and to go on and have a direction in life, do something in my life. And so I decided I had to put it this. But unfortunately, I didn't decide I had to stop going to parties, and I didn't decide I had to stop drinking. And my grades did go up for a bit without the pressure of the extra activities. But by the end of grade 12, I didn't have enough credits. So I went back to school, and I was working part-time in a gas station. And things went on fairly smoothly. And then one day, some people I knew pulled up in a car. And they all got out of the car. It was a small car, but there was like 6 of them in this car. And they all got out, and they just looked at me. And I looked at them, and I said hi to them. And they were just silent. And one of them said, "Brad's dead." And Brad was a very close friend. And Brad was a person who, I believe now, as I look back, I think there's a good chance that he had a mental illness. And I think he had one called bipolar disorder. And he had some troubles with his girlfriend, and his girlfriend had left him, and he was so distraught, and he went into a depression, and he died by suicide. And it was very hard on him. And as things went on that year, things only got harder. I turned 18 that year, and my dad wanted me to move out of the house. But I was still taking high school. I wasn't finished yet. I really wanted to stay and finish high school. So I did everything I could to stay in the house so I could get to school and finish up. And then I needed money for my car so I could get to school. This big revolving trap with just more pressure building up. And it ended up I had something people often refer to as a nervous breakdown. And the way it sort of happened was I was at home, a friend of mine came to visit, and he had his mom's car. It was this really beautiful little sports car. He said, "Come on, I got my mom's car, let's go for a ride." We went for a ride, and talk and everything. And I started saying all these strange things that didn't make sense and that weren't like me. And my friend got really concerned. And he ended up taking me to the emergency room of the local hospital where we lived. And I got taken to a place called Alberta Hospital. I don't know if anybody's ever been there or knows of it. The funny thing about Alberta Hospital is it's tucked away, far away from the city. And it's down unimproved roads, and it's like the highway goes by it, but there's no access to it from the highway. And it's almost as if they want to hide the problem that these people that are different. And I think there's something very wrong with that. I think people who have problems should, as much as possible, be integrated into the community so they can attend school, so they can have a job, so they can have more friends and things like that, go to movies, and do the things everybody does. But because our hospital is so far up that you're just kind of stuck there if you're out there as a patient. And some people are stuck there for years, which I think is a real shame. So I went over to the hospital, and I didn't want to tell them what was going on in my head. I was having delusions, I was having hallucinations, I was paranoid, and I was scared. But I thought if I told the doctors everything that was going on, that they'd never let me out. But by some miracle, the doctors knew what my problem was, and they were able to deal with it. So they gave me medication, and I spent my time watching TV and playing sports and different things. And after a few weeks, I got better, and much better. And all the bad thoughts were run away, and I was acting normal. And so I was released from the hospital. And I thought, okay, great. I like to call it, a lot of people when they first get put on medication, they have the aspirin syndrome. Like when you have the aspirin syndrome, it's like you have a headache, and then you take some aspirin, and the headache goes away. So the headache is gone away, you don't need aspirin anymore. And that's why some people think that psychiatric medications work. But really the truth is psychiatric medications are much different. And when a doctor puts you on them, you have to take them most of the time for life. And or otherwise you're just going to keep having the same problems over and over. And so I left the hospital, and I thought, okay, I'm good now. Maybe I'm sober, there was never anything wrong, maybe it was just a misunderstanding. And so I went off the medication, and in a short time I got ill again, and I went back. And what was really hard was this time they put me on medication, and I did get better. They took more time and they made sure I was more stable, that I understood everything. And then I was released again. And what was really hard was that after I was released the second time, I went back and I got a job at a plastics factory that paid fairly well. That I had worked at before in high school, and I was really kind of looking forward to making the full-time income, maybe having a car again. At that point, my car had broken down, and I couldn't afford to fix it. So I actually did get my old job back at this factory, but within 3 days of working there, they said I was working too slow. And I knew the reason I was working too slow is because I was on medications that slowed me down. And so this reason and many other reasons, again, I stopped taking the medication. I was okay for a while. And as I started having some problems, I thought the best thing I could do, my dad wants me out of the house, I don't have a job, I'm not working at the factory, I'm not doing this. I thought my best option at that point was to join the military. And I thought that if I had the discipline the military would give me, that I could overcome mental illness, which was completely not true. What I needed was the proper care and treatment of a doctor and to follow that treatment. So, fortunately, the military didn't take me. I really think things would have turned out badly if I had got into the military. And I remember when they said, because you have been on this one pill, we could never take you in the military. I kind of looked on the bright side of things, and I thought, okay, now I'm sort of I've got this whole world, I can travel, I can do whatever I want. And what I ended up doing is I went to Vancouver, and I took some trips from there. I went to Victoria, Seattle, different places around Vancouver. And I saw some amazing things, and I met a lot of people, and it was really a wonderful experience. But eventually I did get sick again. I came back, went to the hospital, left again, came back, and so when I came back, I came to a decision. And if any of you look at my books that are available, this is almost a line where what I just told you is mostly what happened in the first through the river and storm. And then mostly what happened after that is what I call my recovery period. And that is in the book, Inching Back to Seeing. And so the recovery period started when I was able to admit, yes, I have an illness. Yes, I'm going to have this for life. Yes, I need help. And so I went to the hospital, not Alberta Hospital, this time I went to the UA Hospital, which was a little bit better. little more access to a lot of things and stuff like that. And the treatment was probably a little better than I would have gotten out of the hospital. And I got out, and I really started to try and work on myself. And that's when I sort of made the decision to quit drinking and do a lot of different things. And I kind of started working my way back. And it wasn't easy. I sort of called my recovery, I called the period of between admitting I had my illness and say, even recently, as recent as 5 years ago, I sort of call that the long and non-linear journey to mental health. When you say non-linear, it's usually like when you have like a straight line, a straight path. And my path was not linear because I would do good for a while, and then I would go off medication, or I would get sick for some other reason, or medication would stop working. And it was really difficult. But I sort of had this thing in my head that I wanted to slowly try and improve a little bit more each day. And so even when I was on this one, there was this medication I was given called Tegretol, and it made me very, very restless. But I still had these goals. I still wanted to be a writer. I still wanted all these things. And so what I would do was I would read, I had this book of short stories, and I didn't have much patience because of the medication. So I would find a short story and I would read it. And then I would pace around until I was tired again, and then read another short story. And this was how I would do things. I would either try to write something or read something every day. And I did something that is beneficial to a lot of people for a lot of reasons. I started a journal. And a journal is where you sort of keep a notebook and just write about your thoughts and your life and your ideas and stuff like that. And you don't show it to anybody. And it's something psychiatrists recommend to their patients. And it's also something that creative writing teachers will recommend to their students, because you sort of have a way of saving your ideas. You can do whatever you want with your journal. You can have fun with it. You can paste in movie stuff. You can start with a movie. You can do whatever, pretty much whatever you want. You get good ideas. And sometimes when I'm writing a story, I'll go to my journal and I'll write maybe a page of dialogue just by hand. Sort of do it that way. But it's a very powerful tool because it's like having a friend you can relate to, even if you don't have a friend you can relate to. And so you keep this journal. And that was, so I started having this thing where I would try to write a full page, typewritten page of a journal every day. And then I started writing, every time I saw a movie, I would try to write a full page of sort of a movie review. And I tried to do a full page of every time I read a book. And I was lonely and I was depressed and I was having difficult times, but I was progressing. I didn't just let my life slip away. And I think that was something really important. And over the years, things got better, things got worse. I ended up, when I was about 29 years old, I hadn't been sick in a long time. And this is kind of dangerous when you have a mental illness and you're not sick for a long time, because I started thinking, well, what if maybe I just have a hormonal problem or something? Or what if I don't need to see my psychiatrist as regularly as otherwise? It's very dangerous to think that way. Because I stopped seeing my psychiatrist. I continued taking my medications, but one of the things I did was I lowered all my medications, thinking that it was sedating me and that if I just lowered it a little bit, it would be okay and I sort of get effects, but I wouldn't be sedated. But the problem was this medication needs to be monitored and you need to have a certain level, otherwise it's not going to work properly, as many medications do, as psychiatric medications do. So I actually ended up getting very ill. And something really unfortunate happened. I had to go to the hospital, and I got a psychiatrist who I didn't like him. I guess he told me to say I didn't like my psychiatrist. I even tried to get a different psychiatrist, and I told him I didn't want him as my doctor anymore. And he didn't find me another psychiatrist, and he wouldn't even see me. He just left me to the hospital. And it was a terrible time. because I didn't know how long it would be there, I didn't, you know, and I was, the ward I was on, you weren't allowed to leave and go walk on the grounds or anything like that. You had to stay there inside 24 hours a day. And this stretched out for months. And this was one of the hardest times in my life. Eventually, I did get another doctor, and the doctor helped me, and within a few weeks, I was out of the hospital. But a lot of things changed while I was in the hospital because I had forgotten how to take care of myself. I had forgotten how to wake up on time, and how to make money. You know, all these basic life skills. I had forgotten how to do them, but I was out of practice, and it was very difficult. So I decided that probably my best bet would be moving to a group home. Not all group homes are good, but some of them can be. The one I went to, the best part about it was that, well, there was two things. Number one was that everybody in the group home either had a mental illness or was trained to deal with a person's mental illness. And this meant that there was very little stigma, very little pressure, very little stress. And so I was allowed, and there was no limit to stay on how long I could stay there. And so I was sort of allowed to just recover on my own. I read a lot of books, and my dad would come once a day and pick me up and go for a walk in the River Valley in Edmonton. It was very beautiful. And so that was how my recovery started. And things just kind of kept getting better from there. And the other thing that was really great about it, the woman that ran the group home had a rule that she would not give the people in the group home any less than what she gave her own family. And that means good food, good housing, good everything, maintenance, all that sort of stuff. And so I stayed in the group for quite a long time. I left for a while, tried to be on my own, went back and forth a little bit. And then finally, they sort of decided, you know, you're doing really well. We want to try you living in your own apartment. And that was about 5 years ago, and it's really fantastic. The problem that happened between me moving into there and now was that my doctor had tried me out on a new medication, and the new medication didn't work for me. It worked for most people that took it. It worked really well. It was a groundbreaking drug, and it was supposed to help me lose weight, and it was supposed to help me in that I didn't have to take it as much and work better and not side effects. But actually, something really bad happened. The new medication sent me into a psychosis, and what I did, this psychosis I went into was very difficult, and it ended up with me being sent to a hospital for 5 weeks. And the irony of it was that at the time, I was an employee of a hospital. And one day I went in the morning and I taught my class, and then I took the bus home. And by that evening, I was a patient in the hospital. And it just, things happened that fast. And so I spent about 5 weeks in the hospital at the time. And one of the things I did was I got a notepad and I wrote some poems by hand, just kind of keep my brain moving. And I later took them after I left the hospital, and I scanned them into my computer. Then I wrote commentary to go with each poem. Then I wrote some essays and wrote some other poems. And I wrote definitions of different medication terms, different psychiatric drugs. I really wanted to explain to people what my experience was like. The next thing I did was I had my dad, my sister, and a friend of mine all write sort of a short essay about what it was like living and dealing with someone who was suffering from a mental illness. That's the book, I would go into ×3 of it. There's like a pearl on the front and a raven or whatever. The final thing I did was that I took and I requested all of my medical notes from the hospital and from the clinic I was going to. And these I also scanned in. So I had the words of people that were around me, my family, people who cared, And then I had the actual notes of the professionals and then poetry. And so it really ended up to be quite a unique book. And it's kind of something I believe is that, like, I could have launched a lawsuit against the company making medication that caused me to get sick, but that would have done me good. Wouldn't have done anyway. But instead, I tried to turn it into something positive. That was about 2 years ago. Now, of course, one of the big things in my life over the past maybe 10 years is that I've been an employee of the Schizophrenia Society of Alberta. I don't know if they have a branch here or anything like that. If anyone knows of someone that needs it or anything, but they're extremely helpful. And one of the things I do with them is I get on the phone and I reach out to small communities like Greger Valley, and I'll just call people and I'll just talk to them and be their friend, and I actually get paid for this. And then the other thing is that I give community education presentations, like I said, to schools and universities and things like that. And the support I've gotten has just been incredible. And I started, like, when I talk to people who have mental health issues, the key thing really, if you have a mental illness, is to have proper housing. If you don't have proper housing, it's so difficult to get proper treatment. And without those things, you're just in a terrible state. And you may be homeless. You need housing, you need proper care. And sorry, I sort of lost my train of thought there. So basically, what I tell people, of course, is the most important thing is housing, care, and medication. And the next step is to get yourself doing something, and you could volunteer. If you want work, the neat thing about volunteering is that suppose you always wanted to be an accountant, but you never were able to finish school. You could do something where you could take some courses through correspondence in accounting and just get a little bit of knowledge. And then you could go to, now this is probably in a larger community that they do this, you could go to a volunteer network and you could say, I would like to do some volunteer accounting. And then you can actually kind of just work your way up. And, maybe from that point you say, okay, well, I've got a couple of years experience or whatever, and I'm going to take the H&R Block course, and at the very least, I'll do my own taxes, and maybe I'll do my family's taxes. And I just really encourage people to set goals and to have a direction and to work towards it in manageable steps. And really, it can be a wonderful journey.